Welcome, everybody, to the first Worklearner TTA Fireside event. So myself, I'm Miles Campbell. I'm the founder of Worklearner and TTA and co-founder of Designability. My employment history, 18 years in the education sector, first as a hands-on teacher, later as a founder of some educational startups, and prior to this I was a professional engineer. So the purpose of these events is to bring together a panel of experts who are going to be able to teach us and talk to us and answer our questions about some different topics. So today we have 3 panelists who have very generously agreed to come along and be with us. So let me introduce them first of all. Oh, by the way, the topic we're discussing today is online education. So, you know, what's going on, what's the current best practice, what's emerging, what's breaking news in online education, particularly professional development. So that's going to be the topic of conversation. We're going to hopefully draw out some of the expertise that we have here and hear from them, and then later on we'll take questions both from the live audience as well as from Periscope and Twitter. So today we have Brooke Hahn, who's the Chief Learning Officer at Open Learning. Brooke's career has been focused on alternative holistic education, philosophies that promote real conceptual learning and understanding. Her goal is to create lifelong learners who develop a deep conceptual understanding of a topic. Brooke is also the founder and writer of The Beautiful Think, a health, well-being and holistic living and sustainability blog. Topics she writes about include self-empowerment, organic food, alternative education, well-being, self-love, sustainability. Brooke loves inspiring others to think differently and to challenge current ways of thinking. Prior to her role as CLO at Open Learning, Brooke founded and ran her own online sustainable and ethical fashion business for 2 years. She drew inspiration from the startup and entrepreneurial movement where real change and positive social action is happening globally. Welcome, Brooke.
Thank you. Yeah.
Next, we have Brad Fuller from Northern Beaches Christian School. Now, Brad, convinced that IT could revolutionise education, began presenting IT seminars for teachers in the year 2000. Brad holds an MA in Adult Education and an ASG National Excellence in Teaching Award. Alongside presenting courses with TTA, Brad is an associate of the Sydney Centre for Innovative Learning at NBCS and teaches music at Northern Beaches Christian School. Welcome, Brad. Finally, we have Thomas Malloy. He's the e-learning specialist at UNSW Law School. Thomas has been in the field of education for the last 25 years as a teacher and an e-learning specialist. He has postgraduate qualifications in education and has worked in the secondary, tertiary and corporate education space. He's worked in the health and nursing sector as a senior instructional designer and program development manager and is presently working at the UNSW Law School as an embedded instructional designer. He's presented at national education conferences, is a regular speaker at the university on educational matters to do with blended learning, curriculum design and building strategies to implement innovative teaching practice using technology. So that's Thomas. Welcome, Thomas. So we also want to welcome all the presenters who are joining us both here live at Roselle and on Periscope, and even those who down the track will be watching this video that we're creating. Thanks for watching. The format for the session will be for me to ask some questions of our panelists and to hear their answers. And then a little later on, we'll create the opportunity for you, the audience, both face-to-face and online, to ask the really tough questions. So if you're joining us online, you'll also be able to post your questions on the Periscope app. So we're still working out Periscope a little. If you've got the Periscope app and you follow @MilesCampbell, then I believe you will be able to push buttons to like us and be able to post your questions, and we should be able to see them streaming in a few minutes. Oh, they're on the phone already. And you can also tweet your questions if it all gets too hard with Periscope. And we're using the hashtag TTA Fireside. So hashtag TTA Fireside if you want to tweet us. So we'll be filming and making this available on the Worklearner YouTube channel as well. So, finally, before we kick off with you three, I just wanted to do a shout out to the TTA Pioneer online presenters. So TTA has been presenting online courses for at least 5 years, maybe 6 or 7 years even. And a bunch of those early pioneers really, I think, had an amazing journey of the very early online days, learning a lot, making a lot of mistakes, trying again, and in the end creating some brilliant courses. And we've put, I think we've got about 60 online courses that we've created, and we've put hundreds of teachers through, and a lot of the feedback for those has been sensational. So so a shout out. We're not claiming that these are the only online experts in the world, but they're the ones. But they do, you've heard their credentials, they do have something to say, and they've been generous enough to come along and share with us. But there are plenty of others who also have a lot of expertise and will be out there already building and running courses for TTA. So shout out to them. Okay, we're going to start with you, Thomas. I'm going to hand you the mic. That's power. Okay, what has been your journey in education that has brought you to the point of working at the law school at UNSW and being nominated for an Excellence Award in Innovation and Entrepreneurship at the university?
Okay. So I started my educational career 25 years ago. It started in a small town in Japan at an English school. I had no qualifications and I'd never taught before, and I got a job as an English teacher there. I flew to Japan, got off the plane, got on a bus, went to the middle of Japan for the first time, and arrived on Friday afternoon at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, completely exhausted, with a backpack on my back. And my boss said, "Fantastic, you're here, your class is ready to go." So she threw me into the class, and there were 15 housewives sitting in front of me, and I went up to the front of the classroom, looked down at them and went, "What the hell do I do? I've just got no idea." And why I'm telling you the story is, from that moment, I really thought, okay, I'm an English teacher now. I have to teach these people English. They don't know English. I know English. How do I do that? What is the process in doing that? So I wrestled with that for 5 years teaching. And then I went to university probably around the time Brad was writing his blog for technology. I did a technology degree as well, with the specific idea that, this was about 15 years ago, with the specific idea that technology was going to come to the fore in education in the future, and I had an inkling. So at that time we were making CD-ROMs. I don't know if you remember CD-ROMs. So making CD-ROMs and I was creating trying to create educational material with CD-ROMs. And just so from there, I was involved in the International Baccalaureate system. The International Baccalaureate completely changed the way I thought about education. I went from sage on stage to guide by the side very, very quickly there. I didn't think it was going to work at all, and after 6 months of really working hard within the IB, I realised that student-centred, giving students the power to create their own learning pathways was really a fantastic way to do it, and I've been an advocate of that ever since. So, yeah.
Okay. Brooke, you're next.
Hello.
So before becoming Chief Learning Officer at Open Learning, you started your teaching journey as a primary school teacher. How did that shape your teaching philosophy that you practice today at Open Learning?
Yeah, thanks, Miles. So I started as a primary school teacher, and I remember being out on one of my first couple of pracs and really struggling with how to engage students, and I could actually see the students in the classroom were quite bored and quite unengaged and not really motivated to be learning what we were giving them. And when we actually looked at it, they were doing like worksheets and things that weren't really connecting to them and weren't really part of their world. And yeah, that was really kind of inspiring for me and very interesting, and it started this kind of approach to student-centered learning. And then from there I went to full-time teaching at an alternative primary school.
Mhm.
And the focus of that school is very much student-centred and active learning and trying to engage students through their own interests. So they didn't actually have like a rewards and punishment system or anything like that. It was very much behaviour management through engagement. So you really learned quite quickly if what you were doing was working or not based on what the kids were like. So yeah, it was really phenomenal for me, and I learnt a lot. I learnt what didn't work and what did work, and what I found was the student-centred approach where you're empowering students and giving them ownership and getting them to have fun and connect to what they're learning about is where it's really at.
Awesome. Interesting that it's student-centred is already emerging as a theme. Brad, you and your story.
Hello.
You've told me to keep you brief if you go on.
Yes.
So not the whole story, just...
This feels like home. These are my people. This is, boy, are we alternative. When I met Miles, I found that TTA gave me an opportunity to get outside of my classroom and share my wins. And so that's essentially what I've been doing with Miles ever since, is initially in face-to-face courses and travelling around Australia with TTA, and then being one of those, I was right, not right at the beginning of online, but close enough that there was still a few bricks missing here and there, and so I guess moving from beyond my four walls to actually being able to talk with over 1,000 teachers around Australia over the time with TTA has been fantastic. And I guess the thing is that by putting my hand up to say, I'd like to share what I've learned, I feel like I've gained so much in return. And
interesting. It's actually, I've often reflected that possibly the people who get the most PD out of TTA are the presenters. It's actually through deciding to share your expertise that you often gain the most. So
it was interesting. The first few courses, I would say, well, here's what I learned. But then once I'd been around Australia once, then I found myself saying, well, here's what's happening, and here's what other people, and suddenly my field of knowledge was broadened so quickly. And then I went from saying, here's what I've learned, and here's what I know about, to here's what everybody's been telling me about all around Australia. And boy, did that open my eyes.
It's almost like, in some ways, the presenters are the ones who volunteer to go find out what's going on and bring it back to the others
Very
who
much so.
are kind of too busy to do that. Thanks, Brad. Okay, I'm going to shoot. Let's dive into... let's plug the microphone back in before we do anything else. Let's dive into e-learning. So I'm going to ask you, Thomas, what are you seeing at a university level? Actually, before we go to that, what do you think the difference is between learning online and learning in a face-to-face environment? What's different about it?
Okay, I think in a face-to-face environment, they say that in communication, 7% of communication is verbal, and the rest is tone of voice and gesture and things like that. So I think in an online situation, you miss 93% of communication. I would argue though that this actually focuses students in on the content and the materials that they're discussing more than in a classroom situation when you're trying to deal with all the idiosyncrasies of communication and the noise and the people looking at you funny ways and even the teacher looking at you and going, what's going on? And so you're dealing with a lot of information in a classroom, but when you're online, I think you have that kind of real focus. You can focus in on the task at hand, basically, and I think that's a great thing about online learning. I think that's the main one for me, is that communication thing. Of course, at the university level, we have a lot of international students, and online learning is great for them because I'm in a law school, so in the law context, there's a lot of arguing in the classroom and debating certain topics, and if English is your second language, it's very, very difficult to do that, particularly at a high level of law. So they thrive in the online environment because they can sit down, they can use a dictionary, they can really debate and argue in a written format in much slower time frames. So that's another one. Of course, face-to-face is extremely important. I think, you'd never, for me, you'd never have a whole university course that's completely online. It just wouldn't work. You need that face-to-face. It's very important for socialization and to get those cues, those social cues while you're in that environment. But, there's some great benefits in online, and there's some great benefits in face-to-face.
I mean, in a way, what we're doing here is an interesting meld of the two, isn't it? We've got a live event, but we're streaming it and we're recording it, and having people in the room makes it different, isn't it? There's something different about that dynamic, but it's about reaching a bigger audience than the people who can just manage to get to that place as well. So it's about economics, it's about a lot of things. It feels to me also, I don't know if you agree with this analogy, and it probably works for a lot of different things, but it's like photography, early days of digital photography, and it just felt like it was never going to be as good as film. And a lot of people said that. It's never going to catch up. So
Kodak
I think Kodak may have said that. And little by little, because it's not going to get worse, is it? They're not going to go backwards. It's going to get better. And innovation is happening so rapidly that it feels a bit like that. But it's still clunky in lots of ways, but it's marching ahead very quickly.
And an example of that in the online space is, a lot of people say if you're in a face-to-face situation, you can pick up who's falling behind and try to help them in a classroom of 30 students. But online, a lot of students can hide, or they can not participate, and it's more difficult to see that if you don't have the social cues to recognise. But I would say, in the future, particularly with learning analytics, that will become a lot clearer as to which students are falling behind and which are not. And in fact, I would argue that it's going to become much more clearer than even the classroom situation with the analytics.
Yeah, that's another thing that's in the pipeline with open learning, is very much so looking into learning analytics and being able to pick up on students that are falling behind, or that aren't sort of doing as well as they could be, or anything like that. And so we'll actually have all of a learning footprint, if you will, for each of the students, which is quite an interesting, I think, opportunity as a teacher.
There's two elements to that, isn't it? There's the element of more and more individualising the learning, so that you're helping that specific person. And then there's the flip side, which is sort of the compliance kind of side of it, I guess, to actually show evidence that this is the learner who you're meant to be, so you're not giving the certificate to the person who didn't actually do the course because they got someone else to do it for them.
Yeah,
so
yes.
I think that's beginning to come through as well, isn't it? That you can see from keystrokes and all that kind of technology that, that there is some ability to, have accountability around learning as well. Okay, Brad, tell me, this is a big question, and Brad has dealt with Brad for a while, probably a year, I guess, was one of his major roles with us when he had a break from teaching was to be helping presenters to build their online courses. And of course, not everyone is as IT savvy as everybody else is. So the question, Brad, is how IT savvy do you need to be to create a great online course at this point in history?
It is an often asked question, isn't it? It's a good question too. And the key answer is that's not the best question. The best question is...
You have a go at my question.
That's a good point. No.
Just tread carefully.
What you're saying, Miles, is I think adaptability and a growth mindset is what you need. Because I can't tell you, because probably another question you would ask is, and what tools do you need to be able to use? And, well, you've just said that you're making new tools. So I don't know how to use those tools because you haven't made them yet. Right? And so what you actually need is just a growth mindset you need resilience, and you need a sense of adventure.
Mm.
And I think also you need to be able to generalize so that if you can look at an interface and go, I see, that's how you make the text go bold, you know, and you know that you've used MS Word 97 and you've been able to generalize that skill, and so that you weren't freaked out when suddenly somebody said we're using Google Docs now. And you could look at the interface and go, all right, I can see how I can generalize my Microsoft into a Google, and then I'm okay. So I think that would be the key thing I'd be looking for in someone who wanted to become an online presenter. And probably the path is going to have the least resistance if you are comfortable in word processing, if you browse the internet and you're comfortable with hyperlinks. If you've dabbled in editing video, creating video, and even being comfortable if you've done FaceTimes and Google Hangouts and Skypes and things like that, and you don't freak out when you see yourself on the screen, and feeling comfortable speaking to camera and recording yourself.
How are you feeling?
Stumbling over a few of them. I was just conscious of that as I was saying that.
Watch this back later and see how you went.
And being able to manipulate the video and manipulate audio, I think oftentimes, you know, the difference between a great online production values and somebody else's is the way people have dealt with audio. And often we get the lighting right, but then we're talking into our Mac microphone. And perhaps if we'd just gone with a different microphone and then learned how to get the volumes right. So those sorts of things. And I think screencasting is a really important skill, whereby you can have something on your screen that you're recording and you're talking to your people as you're recording the screen. And just, I think, being able to capture you and thinking about ways of making that interesting. So
do you think that in some ways the many skills that you may want to pick up in order to become an online course creator, they're going to pay you back in so many other domains, aren't they? In being a 21st century digital citizen, you know, you might find that building your first online course 2 years down the track stops you losing all the money in your bank account to a hacker or something.
Right.
Yeah. So would you agree, Brooke, that they're good skills to have anyway?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the main thing is it doesn't matter that much if you don't do your video like super fantastically, or if you don't do your Periscope recording absolutely perfectly, because if you can show like who you are and that you're caring and that you're creating the best kind of warm environment that you can, like you would in your normal classroom, then like that's what connects with students the most. So Richard Buckland, who's one of the amazing lecturer and co-founder of Open Learning, some of his courses he has videos that he's just sort of filmed himself, and they're a little bit blurry, and the students don't mind because he's really taken the time to connect with them and created a really lovely environment for them. So the actual technical stuff is almost secondary, and it's stuff that you'll pick up along the way.
It's almost like there's some lower threshold of quality where if you've got the production values at some point, you can hear clearly, you can kind of see what's going on. It then becomes more about what's being said. You know, if you can't hear what's being said, then that's a problem. But it's a bit like TVs. You know, you can get the biggest, super high definition television, and it doesn't improve the story. It doesn't. If you're watching a crummy TV show, it's just as bad in high definition. But if you can watch something worth watching, as long as it's reasonable, you get the value out of it. All right.
Yeah, we do find sometimes people do want to spend that big budget on creating like great videos and things like that for their courses, but they don't actually have that much engagement or interaction in the courses because they're kind of spending their effort and their time in the wrong area. So
and then they become almost vaccinated against change, don't they? Because you're like, oh God, I can't change that video. That took so long to produce.
That's right.
So you don't want it to be too terrifying to redo it when you have a better idea.
Yeah, that's right.
Sage advice.
Now, Thomas, Let's just jump to the university situation. What are you seeing at the university level in terms of students' use of technology in their learning?
Okay, well, they are coming into the university now from the secondary system with a lot of experience using like learning management systems and things like that. So they're well prepared, and they've got an expectation that it'll just be a seamless progression to university, but it's not. University is still very much behind what the secondary and primary sector are doing, I think. So we're trying to catch up a little bit. They're mobile. There's no two ways about that. It's mobile learning now. And Brooke and I were talking before. They're living in their phones. They're living in their laptops. We've just done a survey recently of law school students, and in fact, we've done a series of surveys over the last 3 years, 6 semesters, and the PC use is going like this down. Laptop use is going up. So everyone's putting it in their bag, and that's the main computer they're using at the moment. So mobile, if you're producing e-learning, it has to be mobile now, I think. And I think, as we were talking before, you have to understand how people are using mobile, how they're living in it. And so we were laughing before because I nearly ran someone over coming here this afternoon because he was so engrossed in a text that he just walked out into the road, and I'm like, come on. And we have to understand that. Why are they so engrossed in that? And because
he was watching a video on road safety.
Yeah, right. Well, that's what we were saying. As long as it's open learning, it's okay. So those are the trends, I think, at the tertiary level. But we've got a lot of catching up to do. I think it seems like the secondary schools are doing very, 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 very well in this area.
I would suggest, I don't know if I'll be shot down, but I think there's just a huge range of what's going on right now. You know, there's a lot of classrooms that, are very similar to 1972 classrooms, and maybe even 1872, I'm not sure. But there are some classrooms where really cool stuff is beginning to happen. Now, Brad, I want to jump to another topic. We've already sort of touched on it, but how long can it take to produce an online course, and how can we cut down that time? So you've built a lot of online courses.
I have.
Where it seems to me like there's certain almost places you can get stuck, and the time explodes.
Yeah. I thought you might ask me that, and so I've got a list of Brad's tips. Born out of many hours of, oh my goodness, what am I going to do? I think, first thing, you shouldn't have to learn about your content. So first of all, you should love what you're about to teach. And you should know it intimately. So if you already know and love the content intimately, then tick, you can just start typing. So there's a good start. And that's my key. I have to get really... Before I start an online course, I have to be so excited about sharing it that it's going to get me through the hard part of making it. Because oftentimes I don't know how to make the course. Mostly, I don't know how to make I don't know what tools to use, and maybe so there's all sorts of barriers that I'm going to need to push through in order to get this course up. So I need to be passionate, and I need to believe in what I'm doing. So that's going to help a great deal.
Probably also, sometimes you can wing things face-to-face maybe, but I don't think you can wing it online.
Yeah, well, it involves typing lots of dots.
Yeah.
So that would be the equivalent. You just and I'll get back to that later, ... Now,
telling some really long stories might, if they're funny enough, might get you through some face-to-face moments, but online it's like there's a higher level of accountability to the content, and it doesn't evaporate. It's there. You'll be held accountable to that for longer.
Yeah, and you can't dismiss people early. Early mark today. Run out of ideas, off you go. Out to recess. I think another tip would be don't recreate the wheel, don't reinvent the wheel. Link to content. Find great content. And, we're all time poor, and what we want is endorsement of content. And so if somebody else has created great content, it's not cheating to link to it. it's helping. It's helping a great deal. And I think a lot of people think, well, I can't do an online course unless I've got 100% original material. Actually, what I really want to know is what's the best thinking, well, what are the best resources, and can you package that for me and hyperlink to it, which is something I love about online learning, because if I'm aware in a face-to-face course of all the wonderful resources, it's very difficult for me to say, just click.
click, and I get replaced by someone else for 5 minutes.
That's problematic. So even getting the resources to people face-to-face is problematic. So link to resources.
On that topic, I think that's been a big shift in the last few years, is curation as a skill. You know, it being recognised that finding and collecting good stuff. You know, all these new blogging tools and Tumblrs and you know, it's so much of it is you don't have to do anything original. It's just gathering good stuff, sequencing it, and using it smartly is valuable. And I think even universities are beginning to, you know, think about, well, really, if someone's already done that lecture 5 times better and it's online, then we're going to get our person to roll that out again. Maybe we should just be pointing to that and using that. So I think that's a global trend really towards, and people aren't any longer feeling ripped off, I don't think, if you point them to great stuff. You know, people are perceiving value in that. It doesn't have to just be you. And it could almost be seen to be, you know, a sign of quality and smarts, that you're not redoing something that people already know someone else has done better. You're just pointing to it.
That's right.
And adding value in different spots.
Exactly, because then it is all about the value add. Because when you can weave a conversation, or you can weave a narrative around those resources, that's when, which is in the spirit of curation, that's when the value really comes. When you can say, have a look at this, what do you think? And then suddenly we're having a conversation around something, and then you might say, look at this, and then look at this resource, but it's the way you put the resources together, and that's what I guess one Tumblr blog versus you know, there's a lot of people aggregating content, but some are more successful than others because of that flair they have for it. So then building the conversation and building the experience around that content that you found, and then when you are creating content, think about how you can repurpose that content as well. So a long time ago, I made a welcome video, and I was sitting in Cottage Point with the bay behind me, just having a coffee, and it was my introduction video. And I used that same video for a whole bunch of, in fact, it's still up. You can still get a welcome from me. And
we could link to that video in this presentation today.
And so I just made that one video and said, welcome. And if it's generic information, then don't reinvent the wheel and make the same information. Make that one resource that you can use across different courses potentially.
So Brooke, on that, so how is that affecting platforms like Open Learning and the way they're being built, that awareness that people are going to be appropriating, embedding, using? You've even got the option coming up now for embedding widgets and so forth. Tell us about that.
So that's definitely something we encourage, and as you say, there's many people out there with lots of interesting ideas, and I think what's really important in what you're saying about having curated content is having opportunities for students to also be a part of that. So for them to actually, you might put something up as like an inspiration to get them to start thinking about a particular topic. The
students' content may actually end up as part of the course, where if you get a particularly great response to an activity or so forth, that with permission could become an element the next time round when the course runs, so the course is getting better through the organic.
Funny you should mention that. I've got some insight.
Yeah.
Have a go at that.
Yeah.
So, that whole idea of when a course is finished, you clear out the course and pretend it's never happened before. I always found that a bit weird. And we're all just pretending, this must be the first time anyone's ever done this course. So I think maybe it was by mistake or by design, I can't recall, I left the forum comments in from one course to the next course a long time ago, and so nobody had to be the first person to comment.
Yeah.
because they could already read everybody else's comments. So essentially then we just took off from where the last course left off, rather than going through that, hi, this is my first time here, I'm a little bit... We didn't have to do all of that. And so actually, over a number of years, I've left the comments in, and it's awesome. And there's this treasure trove of wonderful interaction and reflection. And we're not pretending anymore that no one's ever done that course.
So do you keep the best comments and drop out the "I hated this course"?
Don't get a lot of that, actually. I guess as a result of... It's really hard for somebody to hate a course that they've been... If it's not all about me, and it's actually about people coming together and building resources together, it's very hard to hate it, because it's our course. And so when it goes from being my course to being our course, then very hard. I hated that. And I think that was really cool what you were saying about let people be the course, and let people find the resources, and just, it's adult education, right? And I'm not the expert on everything. And every time we're involved in adult education, there's a good chance that we'll be the person who knows the least, right? So why would you put yourself in that situation? So I love it when I started one of my courses with, you could spend 10 hours putting content together, but my very first interaction was, okay, everyone, let's do some reading. Go and find 3 things that you're excited about, link it back here, and we'll all read them and have a chat. It was a really brilliant way. And if somebody didn't say to you, go and do some reading on this topic, you wouldn't. You really would. You just... But when you get that push and just say, all right, I'm enrolled in a course, people are going to expect me to have some input, it just gives you that little extra push to get engaged and get out there. And we had all this awesome stuff that, would have taken me forever to find, and I may never have found it. And it empowered the people to feel like, hey, maybe I can just go and learn something myself, which is really important, isn't it? And so there's another, which is then a shortcut to actually getting a course online without having to burn the midnight oil typing stuff up, which actually isn't that as useful, as for people finding cool stuff themselves.
So on that topic, sorry, you go, Thomas.
I'll just finish that because I think there's a fundamental shift, and you've just hit on it right there, in how we deliver information. I think if you look at Bloom's taxonomy, the bottom 2 rungs of Bloom's taxonomy are relevant now. Understanding and knowledge and understanding. Yeah, right.
We don't know what they are.
But really they're relevant in the sense that, I think we should be working in the higher levels and getting the students to get the information and the knowledge and understanding, working with each other around the creativity in the higher levels of Bloom's, rather than us delivering this kind of information. And in e-learning, this is critical. I think if you have content, of course you must deliver some kind of content, but it's about how you get the students interacting with that content in the online space, and how you get the dialogue going around that content. That's the critical point, I think.
I think if I could, let's see if you agree with this. Yes, it can take a long time to build an online course. The one nice thing about it, though, is, you only need to learn what you need to learn when you need to learn it. So it's only at the point where you decide, okay, I've decided I want to have a welcome video with me on it, so I'm going to have to work that out. So I'm going to have to solve that, and I'm going to have to do it. So it's not like you have to go off and do a massive course in everything. You only need to learn the bits you need to learn. So probably the first step is to learn what you need to learn. Maybe to go look at some good online courses, which we'll talk about maybe a little later. Because I think, would you agree, a lot of people don't yet even have in their minds... I'll ask you about this book. Do people come with the wrong idea of even what they're going to be building, what it's going to look like?
Absolutely. We often find people come to Open Learning and they've got sort of a general idea of the topic that they want to teach about, but they don't really know how to make it into a course. And it can take quite a while if you're in like too broad a topic area, it is a long process if you're then trying to design a course. So what we always recommend, and the process that I do in my course design, is always, so who are my students, and what do they want out of this course? So what's the outcome? What do I want them to be able to understand that they will be able to do that they can't do now, but they will be able to at the end of the course, and sort of work out what that goal is, and which you do in face-to-face teaching as well, and then actually backwards map from there. So then you actually get this really specific course, and it's always going towards the learning objective. And then that actually reduces your time sort of getting lost in, you know, different core resources and things that don't quite tie into the learning objective. And then, so once I've got what my goal is, then I can map backwards and work out what my final activity would be that actually measures whether the students have achieved the outcome. It's usually something, you know, quite fun and active, but is also meaningful. And then, sort of what resources or what activities and experiences can I design for them that they can be changed by. So what we were saying before is it's really cool, and when students are actually active in the learning process, they're going to learn something much more deeply than if I just tell them about something, or if I just, you know, show a video and they passively listen, like we're all doing now. You know, you won't learn as much than if you would actually go and create something or do something and share it back into the community. It's a much richer experience.
Do you think that if you were thinking about building an online course, maybe the first thing you should do is go and do 5 online courses? You know, just to kind of see what you enjoy and what you hate as a way, you know, is it a bit silly to build an online course before you've done an online course, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, if you have time, absolutely. When I do it, I always try and think about, you know, would I have fun if I was doing this course, if I was a student? And if I'm not having fun, then you know, there's no way my students will. That's a really good point. In Malaysia earlier this year, I was over giving a talk, and there was another presenter who had run a course on open learning, and he was sort of sharing about his experience. And he was saying, you know, he found that the students didn't really weren't really engaged and weren't really that interested in the course. And he thought, okay, I'll rerun it again next year. And when he sat down to actually look at it again for rerunning it, he thought, I'll just sit and go through it again. Go through it myself as a student just to see what the course is like. And he's like, I'm so bored. He's like, I don't want to do my own course, so how would the students want to? And so from there, which was a fantastic experience for him, which is much deeper than someone, you know, me just, I could tell him, you know, you should make a fun and active course for students, but for him to actually have that experience himself was much, you know. Because
we're probably a kind of unique sort of generation in a way, that where there are a lot of people who are plunging into building online courses for whom they've never learnt that way themselves. So, that's got to be tough.
Always put yourself in the shoes of the student,
Now, I want to jump to another topic, which is, it's connected to production. So it's always seemed to me, the last 5 years of being involved in this, that the two challenges are production and engagement. So how do you not spend 100 hours creating your course, and then how do you not totally bore everyone on your course? How do you actually grab them and get them engaged? So quickly, because I can't believe it, but we've already been going for a while. Could we get your tips on either of those two topics? Either engagement, I prefer, you know, like what's the latest stuff going on that helps you grab people? I'm going to throw mine in first. I'm actually thinking that things like Periscope, which enable a little bit of urgency into when you're trying to reach a remote audience, something that's, you know, synchronous, something that's a little bit live, so that maybe you're just grabbing them together live for a moment, even if briefly, to then, you know, mix it up. Anyway, so I think that could be a bit of a game changer, and I might add with that, I think I can see online learning going to a place where it's a bundle of apps that are being used to deliver courses, not just one, like the one base, like Open Learning may be your base platform, but you might throw in a little bit of Twitter or Periscope or Blab or something else. So yeah, latest engagement thoughts, what's going on? Let's hear from Thomas, then Brooke, then Brad, just a couple minutes each.
So I think with online learning, why are people motivated to learn anything? And I think one of the great motivators is if you feel yourself going up a notch in your learning, that's a great motivator, So in online learning, if you parcel things in short bursts that people can go through it and then jump up a little bit and go, wow, I'm at a new place now.
Yeah, for me, it's always about starting with or always having active learning experiences for students to be doing, and learning experiences that are relevant and meaningful to the topic.
Yep.
And I always like to start with a hook or something that's really going to grab them. So as an example, I've just designed a course, like a beginner's course on physics. And I don't know about you, but most people, when I tell them that, they're like, oh my gosh, physics is so boring. When actually it's super interesting, and I haven't actually studied it before. And the first activity I have in my course is a paper planes design activity. So I actually have students designing paper planes and see how far they, like if they can throw it, get it the furthest distance. And so they're actually designing these paper planes and taking pictures of their design, labelling if they want, and then measuring how far their design would actually fly, and then uploading pictures of that. And then after that, actually reflecting on, okay, what are the physics processes that might actually be influencing like how this paper plane is flying. And so they're actually, I'm not just telling them, about motion and air friction and all that sort of stuff in a really abstract way. They're actually, I don't know if I want to make a paper plane now after talking about it. It's like, I'm really excited about it. So always finding that thing that makes whatever the topic is real and meaningful and relevant to the students.
Yeah.
I think the actual technology itself is secondary.
Yeah.
I think finding what that motivator is. So, I want to learn about physics. I want to understand how to do that.
I think something you've done there as well is it's about, sure, there are certain things you can't do online that you can do face-to-face, but there's also things you can do online that you can't do face-to-face.
Yeah.
So you can't really send everyone off to, make paper planes for an hour and a half when you're in the middle of a face-to-face course. It's, but online, I think sometimes it's just thinking about how to make the most of what you can do online that you can't do face-to-face.
Yeah, definitely, and not trying to, go to like a simulator on how to make a paper plane online, but actually, it's much more tangible and real if you're actually designing it yourself. Yeah.
Brett, engagement tips.
Yeah, well, I think in the spirit of TTA, which was born out of teachers helping teachers, we want to make, there's that idea of, okay, that's all great, but how does that help me on Monday? So my favourite courses are when there's a call to action and it says, hey, there's this cool thing, go and try it in your classroom and then come and report back to us. So it's about conveying small chunks of real-world information that can affect teachers' practice the next day, that they can then come back. And my favourite experiences are when teachers come back to the forum and say, hey, Brad, I tried that thing. It was awesome. And then that encourages everybody else in the course to make it. And then they can say, hey, maybe this is a worthwhile investment because it helped that person. So that would be, that's the key. And not only from a participant's point of view, but from a presenter's point of view, when you have teachers reporting back to you that changed. You helped me to change something in my classroom. That's about as rewarding as it gets, I think.
Awesome. Now, look, I'm going to say thank you to everybody at this point. So to Brad and Brooke and Thomas, thank you so much for joining us and talking to us about online courses. Really appreciate the generosity of your time to come and speak to us, and we hope that we see you all go on and do amazing online things. So thanks.
Thank you very much.